Somebody get Coach Bud a lozenge, yelling a lot during that game. That's NBA Commissioner Adam Silver in the house. Before him, you saw Paul George, who had shot 34.8% in his last 14 regular season games. Paul Millsap for three, plus the foul, made the free throw for the 4-point play.
Paul Millsap played big. A four-man to get out there and stretch the court and put the ball on the floor and make plays.
Pero Antich outside, Hibbert inside.
Shoot it, don't wait.
Gotta get out there.
That's a big matchup, Rick.
Yeah, opens up the lane for this guy, Jeff Teague.
Capped a 16-2 run with that finger roll. Atlanta up 18-9. Paul George to the hoop.
He's really good. That was a good move right there. Sometimes good offense trumps good defense.
He beat DeMare Carroll, very good defensive player, on that foray to the cup. And then it's Lance Stevenson behind the back, step back.
Improvement all season long. He's gonna have to play big and bigger.
He tied the game at 30. Got some side bumps on his way to the bench. Paul George caps a 17-7 run by the Pacers. They led by 6. And then George drives, kicks it to Roy Hibbert. Roy Hibbert for 3 with 10 seconds on the shot clock?
Not good. You want him in the paint, not shooting corner threes, although it looked pretty good.
I think he's looking to compete with Pero there.
The game was tied at 50 at the break. The Hawks right now up by 4. And you see Pero Antich with a little shove on West. West gets right in his nose, and no backing down from Antich.
No backing down from either one of them. I don't think it was worth getting each other's face. A hard foul. I think that's just frustration there on David West's part.
Double technical fouls on West and Antich. The rest of the third quarter was all Hawks. Here goes Jeff Teague.
Oh, took a pause, a look, and a finish.
If this were the regular season, Rick, that might be a Smitty under the rim nominee.
Sure would have been. Might have got my vote.
Paul Millsap over Luis Scola, yes, and the foul.
He's like a small forward in a power forward's body. Put the ball on the floor, make plays, and shoot the long ball. He's playing at a high level.
2 of 4 from deep, 25 points, 8 rebounds for Paul Millsap. The Hawks were up by 18. We go to the fourth, and the Hawks continue the dominance. Antich for 3.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to stop for Pero. He's having success. He shoots that well. They may have to go to a smaller lineup to guard him out there.
Jeff Teague splits the defense. Part of his playoff career high, 28 points. They were up by 20 at that point. Larry.
A dominant win for the Atlanta Hawks in Game 1 of their series versus the top-seeded Indiana Pacers. Tuesday night, time for Game 2. Jeff Teague getting warmed up, and Paul George, who made it known that he would love to guard Jeff Teague, and he'll get a shot at it early on. Teague driving by Paul George, finishing the layup to put Atlanta up 13-11 early in the first quarter. Later in the second, Paul Millsap giving it up, but he gets it back and nails the jumper over Roy Hibbert. Millsap led the Hawks with 19 points on 6 for 12 from the field. Paul George pushing the ball finds Luis Scola. He'll nail the hook shot in the paint. Scola had 20 points and 7 rebounds. Teague driving by Paul George again and finishing. He was 6 for 13 from the field and 14 total points for the Atlanta Hawks. C.J. Watson passing to an open Paul George, who knocks down the 3, and this time he's got a little something to say to Jeff Teague. Paul George had 27 points and 10 rebounds in the game. Second half highlights David West finding Paul George. He'll knock down another 3. He was 5 for 7 from behind the arc. Lance Stevenson driving. He'll get the layup to go plus the foul. Stevenson had just 7 points, but he also contributed 5 assists and made the free throw there. And the Hawks go cold in the third. It's Kyle Korver missing. Jeff Teague can't get it to go either. And Mike Scott will take one from the top of the key, and he'll miss that one bad. And Coach Mike Budenholzer is not loving it. Atlanta was only 1 for 8 from the three-point line in the third quarter. David West with a nice pass to George Hill for the layup. He had 15 points on 5 for 8 from the field. And Paul Millsap pulling up from downtown. He won't get it, but Paul George headed the other way. He'll pull up and take the 3 to beat the buzzer and end the third quarter. Indiana outscored Atlanta 31-13 in a huge third quarter, 79-65 in the Pacers' favor heading into the fourth. Paul George driving in for the layup. That caps a 19-0 Pacers run to put Indiana up 87-65. And Jeff Teague blocked by Ian Mahinmi, heading the other way. George Hill finds Luis Scola. and he'll finish the right-handed layup to put Indiana up 92-67. That would finish it off. Final score 101-85, and with that Pacers win, the series is now tied 1-1. Game 3 is Thursday night in Atlanta.
The Indiana Pacers used a 31-13 third quarter to take Game 2 and even the series with the Atlanta Hawks. There is Lance Stephenson before the game. He and Evan Turner reportedly got into a bit of a mix-up at practice, shall we say. There is a mix-up from Paul George fouling Kyle Korver on the 3. Then later, Paul George called for an offensive foul. He'd have to head to the bench early. Later in the first, watch Jeff Teague bringing the ball right up with the little scoop layup there. He was 7 of 20 from the field. Atlanta already up by 6. Later in the first quarter, David West. Nice little hesitation move. Gets the ball right to the basket and lays it in. 16 points, 7 rebounds. Paul Millsap strong in the paint, throwing that one down. He had a double-double, 14 points, 14 rebounds. Atlanta up by a pair, 30-28. At the break, they led it by a single. To the third quarter we go. DeMarre Carroll goes to Kyle Korver, and that's a brilliant idea. 4 of 7 from range on the game. Then shot clock winding down. Paul Millsap outside just pulls on a deep one, and glass, please. That one goes in. 53-45, the Hawks in the lead. They're up by 8. Later in the third quarter, look at Jeff Teague hustling, going the other way and throwing that one down. The Pacers get outscored 28-20 in the third quarter. Atlanta in control headed to the fourth. Fourth quarter now, Shelvin Mack's only basket of the game. Right here, a 3 gives the Atlanta Hawks the lead by a dozen. Then it's Lance Stephenson. Boy, he came to play tonight for the Pacers. Corner 3 goes down. He led Indy with 21 points. That cuts the lead down to 4. Plenty of time to go for Indiana. And then it's Stephenson driving with his squad down by 6, gives it to Luis Scola, who quickly lays that one up and in. He had 17 off the bench. George Hill can't handle the Paul George pass, and Atlanta gets a steal. We go the other way, and Jeff Teague again with power, up and throwing that one down. A game-high 22 points, 10 assists to go with it. Atlanta up by 9. Then less than 3 to go. Jeff Teague just flings this one up and in. It's a 3-pointer. Now, the refs later went to check and see if it was a 3. Indeed, it was a 3, but you could see Jeff Teague's right foot right there out of bounds. That portion of the play is not reviewable, so the refs could not overturn that call. The 3-pointer stood. Jeff Teague credited with the triple. Atlanta up 87-78. Now it's 89-80, and Kyle Korver nailing the coffin right there. Atlanta up by a dozen. They go on to win it by 13 and take a 2-1 lead in the series. Your final score, 98-85. The top seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs, the Indiana Pacers, starting to have their backs against the wall against the 8th-seeded Atlanta Hawks. They're down 2-1 in the series. Roy Hibbert, the All-Star, has struggled in this series, but early on, Hibbert active in the first. Watch the nice move here against Elton Brand, a little up and under that goes down later. It's Evan Turner looking and finding Roy Hibbert, and yeah, that's easily done for Roy inside, and Roy playing some defense as well, getting the rejection on Pero. And Pero and Teach didn't like it, but it was a block for Roy Hibbert, who had 6 points and 2 blocks at the half. Pacers struggling as a team in the second quarter. Paul George can't get the shot off before the shot clock expires. Later, Lance Stephenson open for 3, and being open isn't enough. He misses the 3 there long. George Hill also taking a 3-pointer. This one doesn't go. The Pacers 0 of 5 from distance in the quarter. They shot just 25%. Jeff Teague driving to the hole. Just missed the little layup. Look at Paul Millsap active inside. 18 points at the half. Atlanta in front by 4. Less than 3 to go in the half. Millsap again. Tough spinning move. The Hawks outscored the Pacers 26-13 in the quarter. They take a 6-point lead to the break. Third quarter. Pero on Teach passing to Kyle Korver for the 3. 3 of 8 from range on the game. Atlanta up by 9. Could they take a 3-1 lead in the series? Then Paul Millsap fouls David West, picking up his 4th foul. Paul Millsap heads to the bench. Hawks turn the ball over in transition. It's Paul George, and he's so tough to stop in transition. Smooth move to the basket, gathers and lays it in. He was 10 of 18 from the field. Then David West kicking it outside. George Hill knocks down a triple. 15 points on the game for Hill. Indiana in front, 56-54. As Paul Millsap looks on, and then Paul George from the rafters throwing that one down. He had a double-double on the game, 24 points, 10 rebounds. Indiana up by a single. We go to the fourth quarter. DeMarre Carroll looking for Paul Millsap on the, just hanging around play. Millsap just beats the buzzer. And yeah, the Hawks take the lead 70-68. Millsap, a 29-point game. That was game high. Jeff Teague knocks down a three of his own. He had 14 points. Atlanta suddenly up by 5 with less than 5 to go. Luis Scola passing to George Hill, and this was a critical shot. The answer right there, right back at the Hawks. That cuts the lead down to 2, and Roy Hibbert fired up for his teammates while he's on the bench. David West then passing to Paul George. Paul George from distance, and look who's fired up again. Roy Hibbert loving what he's seeing. Indiana in front, 86-85. George Hill to David West for 3, and David West showing some range. 18 points on the game, and once again, fired up. Roy Hibbert, first one out to greet his teammates. It's 89-85. Indiana in front. Now Paul Millsap coming right back at you, hands it off to Kyle Korver. Kyle Korver misses the 3, but he's fouled from distance. Watch it one more time, feet clearly behind the line. It's a touch foul, but it is a foul on a shooter. So Kyle Korver goes to the line and knocks down each and every one of his free throws. It's a 1-point game. George Hill, less than a minute to go, driving inside, gets the tough layup to go. 91-88. Indiana by 3. Hawks go for the quick 2, down by 3, and it's Paul Millsap inside, missing the short layup. He thought he was fouled, didn't get the call, so it's a tough play for the Hawks there. Paul George fouled immediately on the ensuing inbounds. He goes to the line. This is the first free throw for Paul George, and it's short. He has a chance to ice it with 7.5 seconds left. This is the second one, trying to lock this one down for Indiana, and he misses that one. So the Hawks get the rebound. They've got a shot off a timeout, off the inbounds play that the Hawks dial up after the 2 missed Paul George free throws. Look who, Paul Millsap, looking at a 3. He can't find an opening. Pero on Teach has a 3 opportunity, and he can't get it to go. Indiana survives against the Atlanta Hawks. It's a 3-point win, 91-88, that evens the series at 2 games apiece.
With the series tied at 2 games apiece, a critical Game 5 for the Indiana Pacers and Atlanta Hawks in Indianapolis Monday night. And the All-Star Paul George gearing up for a big night, and he started early. George Hill kicking it out to PG on the wing, and he'll knock it down to put Indiana up 18-16. He had 12 points at the half, but another day at the office for Michael Scott from the top of the key to put Atlanta up 24-21, and yet again, Mike Scott to put him up 27-21. And now Elton Brand getting in on the action, kicking it to Mike Scott yet again. He had 17 points in the quarter on 6 for 6 from the field and 5 for 5 from downtown. Shelvin Mack feeding Scott for another 3. Atlanta had 9 3-pointers in the quarter. That ties an NBA playoff record. And Lou Williams penetrating, kicking it out to Scott. Atlanta outscored Indiana 41-19 in the second quarter, and Coach Frank Vogel not happy with his top-seeded Pacers.
Stevenson. Air ball, and controlled by the Hawks. And now the fans reacting at the 2:08 mark of the second. Mack the pull-up pop, book it. Everything going down for the Hawks.
The Pacers fans booing their home team. The Atlanta bench outscored Indiana's bench 34-2 at the half. Jeff Teague finding Paul Millsap for the one-handed jam. And later in the third, Teague with the ball again, finding DeMarre Carroll in the corner, and he'll knock it down. Larry Legend clearly upset at the inconsistency of his Pacers during this series. A 30-point lead for Atlanta, 80-50. But the Pacers did come back to make a run in the fourth quarter. Paul George finding C.J. Watson for the corner 3. And David West driving in to finish the layup inside the paint. CJ Watson capping off a 37-16 run since that 30-point deficit from the Pacers. And the Hawks hang on in the end. Paul Millsap pulling up to knock down the jumper. Atlanta wins at 107-97. The Hawks now up 3-2. Game 6 is Thursday in Atlanta.
And Paul Millsap wearing that old logo, the original logo dating back to like 72.
And he came out like gangbusters, big time rebounds, extra possession right there. Kyle Korver knocks down a 3.
10-5, Atlanta in front. Larry Bird, he's talking about grinding. What a series it's been for him. Then Millsap out to DeMarre Carroll. He hits a 3. So that Atlanta 3 showing up in spots, part of a 12-0 Hawks run. Roy Hibbert fouling Millsap, his second foul. He is gone, didn't play much early, so Chris Copeland checks into the game. First time in the series we've seen Copeland in the first quarter. And Copeland, some dividends.
And as soon as he comes into the game, he stretches the floor. He's a three-point shooter. And again, more importantly, he opens the lane. So consequently, Paul George can get to the lane and there's open space. He can get in and he can create for himself or others.
A 1-point lead for Indiana. Then George Hill out to Lance Stevenson, the corner 3 ball.
Yeah, Lance Stevenson brought his A game tonight. 9 big rebounds, a few assists.
And then this was an interesting little moment toward the end of the half as George Hill and Mike Scott get tangled up a bit. Scott went both hands and mushed Hill in the face. Double technicals and also a foul on Scott. But as you take a look at this replay, Paul George walks onto the floor.
Yeah, we got Paul George and looks like that's Razul Butler. So both of those guys, depending on, will the referees consider this a real altercation? That's the tricky word there for people at home. So things might get a little dicey tomorrow.
It's an altercation and someone steps on the floor, they can be looking at a 1-game suspension. Big 3 by Hill at the end of the second, and here's George.
We got to play small against this team and play a little faster. They spread the floor out, and we got to have guys that can make the run. So that was the key.
Yeah, small it was. So Roy Hibbert starting the second half. He's got his shooting shirt on. He is on the bench. Meanwhile, Paul George probing, looking, loses Antich, and lays it up and in.
Oh, I love that move right there. Not selling for the contact from Antich, keeping his dribble alive and taking him to the rim.
And Jeff Teague. Oh, Scott with the slowdown. Oh, my goodness. They were on their feet at Phillips Arena after that.
I don't know if he's my cousin or not because I don't know too many Scots jump like that, Isaiah.
I was just going to say I didn't go there, but I'm
going to know. Must be a cousin I have never seen yet.
Meanwhile, Hibbert misses. And on the other end, how about Jeff Teague? Watch him go to work. Shades of Isaiah Thomas.
I wish I looked that good, but if you're giving it to me, I'll take it.
That is up by 1. And then more of Teague. Floater in the lane.
Well, that's part of this game, Vince. They made him a scorer in the second half, which is good, but no one else is touching the basketball.
He had a dozen in the third quarter, did Teague. DeMarre Carroll, Lou Williams.
Nice shot. Excellent ball movement by the Hawks right there, sharing the wealth.
Larry perturbed. Atlanta's up by 4. More of Jeff Teague from the elbow. He hits the jumper 84-79. Atlanta. The excitement permeating through the highlight factory, but the Pacers answering back. David West, he was just incredible down the stretch.
Wild West, down the stretch, under control, big-time plays.
Yeah, he really stepped up. Then George Hill, looking, waiting, and past Korver laying that one up and in. And it's 85-84 Indiana. Now the Hawks tie the game at the line, under a minute left. More of David West. Watch this big man move.
Grown man move right there. Great patience.
Back the other way. Key for the Hawks. They are down by 2. Williams drives and he kind of got stuck in the air, and Paul George was able to make the steal.
The Atlanta Hawks have won 3 of their last 4 times that they've played in Indiana. Today, it's Game 7, the 1 seed, the Indiana Pacers, taking on the 8 seed Atlanta Hawks. Paul George not suspended for coming barely onto the court in game number 6. So in the game and looking good. How about that reverse jam? He was 11 of 23 from the field. Atlanta, though, up 9-7 at that point. Roy Hibbert, he's had a very substandard series, but he had a nice first quarter here. 8 points, 4-5 from the field in the first quarter, giving the Pacers a boost. Jeff Teague drives in for the nice layup. Tough for Paul George to guard him out there. Gets that up and around George, but Teague just 5 of 16 from the field. Kyle Korver gets fouled on the 3 by Chris Copeland. 3 and 1 for Korver, who was 5 of 10 from distance. Paul George driving, gets to the basket, lays it in. Huge game for George. 30 points and 11 rebounds. The Pacers by a single. Lance Stevenson spinning baseline inside, just bowling his way over Kyle Korver. 8 of 12 from the field. Jeff Teague outside misses the jumper in transition. Paul George does not miss the jumper. Perfect form, perfect shot. George, 16 of his 30 came in the first half. Indiana up 46-34. Jeff Teague drives and attempts to finish the half with an exclamation point, but the exclamation point goes to Jan Mahimi, just swatting that one away. The Pacers finished the first half on an 18-4 run. They take an 11-point lead to the locker room. Second half, Lance Stevenson out there having fun. Beautiful no-look pass inside. George Hill gets the layup. He had 15. Watch the pass again. Really a nice no-look from Stevenson, giving the Pacers some energy. They go up by 11. Meanwhile, the Hawks taking their puncher's chance in this one. They're outside shooters. That's what they do. It just didn't go down today. DeMarre Carroll, 0 of 5 from distance. Shelvin Mack missing off the bench. Then it's Pero Antic missing the three-pointer. Hawks starters not named Kyle Korver were 0 of 15 from beyond the three-point line in this game. Lance Stevenson, meanwhile, sees some space, goes inside, gets sort of a Blake Griffin dunk right there. 19 points, 14 rebounds. Roy Hibbert again working in the paint, just flings that one up. It goes in. 13.7 rebounds. Again, much better contributions from Roy Hibbert. Hawks make a run, though. Shelvin Mack to Mike Scott. Tough shot, but it goes down, and Larry Bird, here we go again. 15 off the bench for Mike Scott. Later, the Hawks working it into Paul Millsap, who gets the layup. He had 9 points in the quarter, and the Hawks suddenly back within 8. Fourth quarter now, Paul George splits the double team, hangs in the air, little push shot goes down, and yeah, how's Mr. Bird feeling right now, the president of the Pacers? How about a little sigh of relief for Larry Bird? There you go. Feeling better. Pacers up 77-64. Then Lance Stevenson inside. Beautiful layup there. 84-68. Roy Hibbert misses inside there on the hanging reverse, but goes back up and gets the layup to go down. That makes it 88-71. That's got to give Roy Hibbert some confidence. Hawks missing deep in the corner. Paul George outlets to Lance Stevenson, and yeah, a 1 seed can in fact beat an 8 seed. The Indiana Pacers finally take down the Atlanta Hawks. They win it by 12. Your final score, 92-80.